Welcome to ye next lesson. Today we're going to go on a quest for Hooke's Law. Where the search will take us, who knows? But like any good adventure, if we're going to go on a quest, we need a treasure map. And so we will follow this map and hopefully come to find the treasure of Hooke's Law somewhere hidden amongst all these places. Alright, so where should we begin? It's so hard to read maps. There. Right there. I think we should start by looking at our learning objectives. Let's look around and see if we can find them. There we have it. We found our learning objectives. First, we wish to explain St. Venants Principle. Then we want to generalize Hooke's Law for variations in cross-section geometry and materials. And finally, we want to apply Hooke's Law to solve some engineering problems. Oh, what an adventure we will go on today. Now for our first stop after our learning objectives. It seems that St. Venant was last located at the Bat Caves. Now, I've been to the Bat Caves, and I found some treasure, and I want to share it with you. Of course, I hide my treasure in the secret chest. Amongst other things like rock band pieces for the Wii. I find other old materials like St. Venant's personal effects. Now, before we look at what St. Venant left for us, I think we need to become a little bit familiar with St. Venant and his principle.
St. Venant's principle says, stress and strain produced at points in a body sufficiently removed from the region of load application will be the same as the stress and strain produced by any applied loadings that have the same statically equivalent resultant and are applied to the body within the same region.
Alright, I have no idea what that means. Perhaps St. Venant can help us clear things up. Seems that he's left a letter to us. Dear fellow adventurers, if you are reading this, I have probably long since passed. I had traveled to this corner of the world in search of the fabled Hooke's Law and the power it possesses. Legends say it is as good as gold and has the power to solve deflections in the linear elastic range. While my principles hold true, I still yearn for the law. I hope these possessions of mine might help you on your path to learning. In mechanics we trust, St. Venant. It seems that he's left us another item inside. Seems he's left us some sort of glove with a bunch of markings on it. Can we use this to help get to the bottom of his law? Well, if I think about it, right, and I want to stretch this glove, what happens to those blocks? I think when we look at St. Venant's principle, we have to imagine there's sort of two parts to the principle. Number one, when we stretch, we say points far removed from the load application have uniform stress. So basically, if we look at this glove, when it's close to my hand, up over here, you can see that the blocks are getting skewed and there's a lot of funny business going on. But when we come out to the middle, somewhere over here, we see that we have somewhat of a uniform stress condition. So that's kind of the first part of St. Venant's principle, is that when we are sufficiently removed from the load application, we have uniform stretching behavior. The other part has to do with statically equivalent loads. And so all St. Venant is saying is that whether I apply this load over here as one load, like the load of P, or if I was to apply it as two separate loads, P over 2, I don't know, it's hard to do with one hand. I need some deck mates to come help me, but I don't see anybody around. But if we have 2 points of application, then this will produce the same net effect in the member as the one load did. So those are the 2 parts to St. Venant's Principle. Hopefully that makes some sense. Let's go ahead and draw some of these deformations in our notes.
So again, we split St. Venant's Principle into 2 parts. The first part is the fact that away from the point of load application, the stress is somewhat uniform. We get a uniform stretch. So let's go ahead and draw what that looks like. So when we have a load applied at the hole, we imagine the whole bar deforms. And then as we saw with the glove, right where we applied the loading, we had a definite more stretch. We have the member stretching out in that local area near the hole. So we see that stress, the deformations at the hole are non-uniform, right? Because we have that high point load, and then the forces kind of have to distribute throughout the width of the material. If I was to draw the stress profile at the hole, it would look something like this. So I'm taking like a free body diagram through section AA, and I draw my stress. Now right on the inside, close to my load, I have high stress, and then away from the load, I have lower stress. So I see that I kind of get this kind of parabolic die-off of the stress as I move from the edge of the hole towards the edge of the plate. All right, so I just want to make that note that because we have a local stress concentration, and we'll cover stress concentrations in 2 lessons, so we will see that in a couple classes from now. We see that the local stress concentration, or that distortion due to the point load, is caused in our member. Now, as we go away from where we apply the load, so let's say we move down the bar somewhere to section BB in this vicinity, we see that at this point our little squares were somewhat regular. They were larger than they initially were, but they've just kind of stretched out uniformly across the width of the member. This is what we call uniform stress. And so if I was to make my free body diagram of this section, I would see that I'd have one kind of constant value of stress. And so luckily most engineering problems fall into this category, that once we move away from the local stress, localized to where the forces are applied, we assume that we have uniform stress conditions. And we will assume a uniform stretch along the length of the member when we take a look at Hooke's law. The second part of St. Venant's Principle said that statically equivalent loads produce the same effect. And so what this means is that in case the case on the left and the case on the right, as we see them here, the stress at both of these cross sections away from the load application will be the same. And that's just because P over 2 plus P over 2 gives us P, and we would say that both of these bars would deform the same amount. So if we were looking at a number and we wanted to determine how much they would deflect, we're saying because they have the same resultant force, they will deflect the same amount. What is considered away from the holes? So St. Venant defines away from the holes as approximately the largest width of the plate away from the point of load application. So in this particular instance, we would take the width of the plate as being the dimension, the horizontal dimension as we're looking at it here. Let's call that W. Then we'd have to look at stress at some point, at least W away from where it's connected. So whether it's connected at the fixed end at the bottom or with W away from the bolt holes at the top. So this is what we mean by away from the holes. Most engineering problems, we will be looking at stretch sufficiently away from the point of load application.
With that, just like St. Venant, we still yearn for Hooke's law. Let us continue our journey. in hopes of finding it.